Good evening. It's nice to see a lot of interested folks come to Town Hall. So normally we start with residents' concerns, and the hook on that is resident concerns. We'd like to hear issues that people bring up which are not otherwise addressed in the agenda. For those of you who might be here to discuss the situation, the site plan conditions for the tennis facility, that'll be item 3, and we will take that up in due time very shortly. So anybody that has any residents that have any concerns they'd like to bring before the board that's not addressed in the agenda, please come forward.
Hi, folks. This is, for those watching at home and here in Town Hall and the Select Board, I'm Glenn Cody. I was elected this year to the school committee representing Acton, and I'm the Select Board liaison. On the school committee, I'm also on policy, also a liaison for the Special Education Parents Advisory Committee, and I'm on the Wellness Committee. We're looking at effects of social media on student anxiety, among other things. I'm just here to give a quick update. I'll be brief because it's a big meeting tonight. Let's see, where are my notes? Yep, so the restructuring process is chugging along. For those in the community who don't know, our school district has been in a pretty big budget crunch for a while now. We simply don't have the financial resources to keep the way our school is structured out to maintain our education levels that our community has come to expect, so we need to restructure it. That ranges in a lot of different possibilities, ranging from doing nothing on one hand to quite a few options. We hired a consultant to give us as thorough a briefing as we could on the different possible scenarios working with. It ranges from doing nothing to consolidating or merging schools, closing aging buildings, grade banding, which is where you take, instead of having elementary schools being K through 6, you can have schools with 2nd and 3rd graders, 4th and 5th graders, et cetera. You can set it up in a couple different ways that tends to be more efficient for staffing resources and deploying paraprofessionals, teaching assistants, because not all 3rd graders are behind in reading or math the same way as a 5th grader might be. We're taking community input very seriously. We had a virtual forum with almost 400 attendees over Zoom. Tori has been facilitating that. Tori Campbell is chair of the school committee. For those who care about our schools, and many of us moved into town because our school districts are quite good, I encourage you, please, to go to abschools.org/read the plan, and we have our community survey open until Sunday, November 9th.
30 seconds.
Yep, and for people that are wondering what the main cost drivers are for our school districts, a lot of it is health insurance rates, which are projected to rise 18% for employees and 54% for retirees, 5-4. And that's health insurance, so it's already massive. That's it for now. Our next school committee meeting is Thursday, November 6th. I encourage community members to attend. One of the things on our agenda is hearing from our student liaisons and also exploring more collaboration with ActonTV, who is recording this, and we're hoping to get them involved in a media and communications program too for the kids. So happy to be here. Anyone reach out if you have any questions.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room that has something they'd like to speak of that's not on the agenda? Hey, David, did you say we have?
There's one online. Hi. Hi,
Go ahead.
I'm Corinne Hawks. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, please, Corinne.
All right. I'm on the Acton Finance Committee, but my comments have nothing to do with Finance Committee business. I want to ask some questions and make some comments about the Kelly's Corner traffic patterns, they're kind of a mess. There are too many lights, right? So coming from, you're getting off Route 2 and going up Mass Ave, you hit 3 traffic lights within a quarter of a mile of each other. At night, it's completely unnecessary. If you're trying to take a left-hand turn coming out of CVS or the community road, you just sit there and wait when there's no traffic to take a left-hand turn. And you know, there's been times where I've come through kind of later at night and those lights are perfectly out of sync. So you just get to a red light, you wait, you go, you get to another red light, you go, you get to another red light. The light up at Charter Road and Stop and Shop, that could probably just be used only when buses are coming going and be blinking red, yellow the rest of the time. So that's one thing. I think there's just way too much control out there. My other comment is, I've heard this is temporary, and so like I guess this is part question and part comment, is the direction I usually go from is coming from West Acton to up to the Roach Brothers, and those 2 left-hand turning only lanes turning into 1 lane is ridiculous. Nobody's using that middle lane anymore. They've realized it doesn't go anywhere. Meanwhile, people who are trying to go straight or take a right-hand turn, everybody's in the far right turn, and so that people who might want to take a right on red have to sit behind people who are waiting to go straight. If that's a temporary situation, I don't know what the wait is. They should just repaint those lanes. Have one go left, one go straight, one go right. And I've heard people complain about coming from the other direction too, like if you're coming from Ace Hardware into that intersection. So I guess my question is that temporary? Is that going to be addressed? Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we've addressed similar questions a couple of times in the past, and I certainly look to the town manager to correct me, but I will confirm that it is a temporary situation down there. The project is still ongoing. There are going to be some considerable changes still made to the traffic patterns, and a lot of that work, I believe, will happen during the winter and into the spring. And I will defer to the town manager for any finer details.
I think you covered it pretty well. Thanks.
Yeah, it's not a great situation right now, but it's a work in progress.
Can I follow up? I just want to follow up on that. So why can't the lines just be repainted now? Like is that ever going to be, there's never going to be 2 lanes to turn into on the other side of that turn.
Yeah, we should probably take this offline.
All right.
Thank you. Moving along. Chair update, I have nothing. Town manager?
Thank you. 2 items. Just to note that the Veterans Day ceremony will be on as usual this year on the 11th day at 11 a.m. So that's Tuesday of next week. And I encourage all to be there. It's always a very thoughtful ceremony. And if you have any questions about that, you can contact the Veterans Office. I also wanted to mention that our fire department has been going through some pilot study scenarios. And if you recall, we went to 2 stations about in February, then we went to 3 stations in the summer, and we're at 3 stations currently. We're not using the center station at this time, but we have some construction projects on both on the interior and the exterior of the West Acton Fire Station that are scheduled to start in December. And so we're going to be redeploying staffing out of the center station. And because of the scheduling for the work, we're actually going to start to do that relocation in November. So again, hopefully no one noticed that the department staff were coming out of different stations. They certainly noticed. It's been a pretty big impact on them to be moving them all over town. But we're going to do it one more time this winter as we do that project. And then, so I just want to give a notice to the board that we'll be sending out a more detailed news flash when the exact timing is determined, but it'll be in November. And you shouldn't notice, but just so you know.
Thank you. Comments from my colleagues? David?
Good evening. I just wanted to reinforce what Mr. Cody said, that today's the final day to take the AB Forward survey on school restructuring. Go to abschools.org, click on AB Forward, and then you can watch the video on the left and take the survey on the right of the page. I also want to say that a good outcome from the AB Forward reorganization is required to properly fund our educational needs moving forward, so it's very important. We may touch on that a bit more during item 7 in our agenda this evening.
Alyssa?
Thank you. I just wanted to alert everyone that there is a public hearing coming up with the planning board. As you may remember, at town meeting this year, we passed a zoning change to make cluster zoning the by right method for subdivisions. It's called open space residential development, and it's also known as Habitat for All. It was Article 31. And the planning board will be adopting the new rules and regulations, which cover subdivisions. And that hearing is planned for November 18th at 7:05 p.m., and it's in this room, room 204, and also on Zoom. There was recently a news flash that was sent out from the town, and on the website, on the homepage of the website, you can still find that news flash and access the documents that you would need to read in order to familiarize yourself with those changes. And I encourage everybody to come or watch the planning board public hearing. Thanks.
Thank you. Jim?
I wanted everyone to know that I won't be running for re-election in the spring for a third term as a select board member. I've found this work to be very rewarding, but I have figured out that I have become quite overcommitted. Leaving the board at the end of my term in April is the simplest way for me to have more time in my life for my other interests and commitments. I'm happy to share my thoughts and experiences on serving the board and running for the board with anyone that's considering running. I hope you will all do some thinking about who might be able and willing to run. I've been doing that. That would continue the good work that we've been doing together. The board, we developed a really wonderful way of listening to each other's different thoughts and opinions and finding ways of moving forward that represent the best thinking that we can do together. It's what I was hoping for, but it's not what I was expecting. That quality of being able to work well with others will be my main criteria in choosing who, if anyone, to support in the upcoming election in April. And I still have more than 6 months left, so I have many board and committee-related projects that I'm looking forward to completing, and I'm glad I have some months to savor our remaining time working together. That's it.
Thank you very much, Jim. I look forward to the next 6 months. Okay. With that, we'll move on to new and special business. Item 3 is discuss and consider rescindment of site plan special permit 05/30/2025-494. Use special permit number 06/25/2025-504. And use special permit 06/12/2025/506. Select Board decision from August 25th, 2025 for 45 Nagog Park. Now, I suspect there's a few people here that are interested in this action. And I just want to let everybody know right up front, all we're going to be discussing tonight is whether or not to rescind those approvals. We will not get into a site plan hearing. We will not get involved in the details of of the, any of the points about the buildings themselves or the operation. There will be a site plan hearing, which I believe we've scheduled for our next select board meeting. And I would encourage folks that are interested to attend that hearing or send emails in advance. Certainly, we will open this up so that people can make comments, but if there are any substantial comments, they won't, since we will not have a hearing open at the time, you would end up having to repeat all of that information at a later point. We can't take that into consideration tonight. So certainly encourage folks to make their wishes known, but just be aware that if you really want to have an impact on what might or might not happen out there, you should plan on coming back for the subsequent hearing. We will be strictly enforcing a 3-minute limit for any comments that people might wish to make. So I will open this up for discussion amongst my colleagues, and then we will have time for hopefully brief comments from you folks. John, would you like to start off?
Thank you, yes. So this is a project over at 45 Nagog Park was how it was initially listed, and it was a pickleball facility proposed by Marcus Lewis Tennis Center. And the hearings occurred over the summer, and the board ultimately decided August 25th to approve 3 different permits that were required to move the project forward. Recently, within the last, I'd say week or two, we became aware that there was a defect in the notice that we provided to abutters as part of the process. You know, with every public hearing, we put something in the newspaper twice, we post it online, and then we send it out to abutters of a certain range around the project. And due to a clerical error, the range around the project was slightly modified and didn't get to the full extent of people that it should have reached. So with that defect now known to us, the correct course of action is to, A, issue a stop work order, which we've already done as of Thursday or Friday last week. B, ask the board to rescind the decision. And then C, re-advertise and reconduct the public hearing, which we've already started the process to do. As you mentioned, assuming the board approves our recommendation to rescind, the public hearing for this project will be held on the 17th. So the motion or the request I have we have for you tonight is to rescind those decisions as listed on the agenda.
Thank you. Comments from my colleagues? Jim.
The extent of the error in the notification was mostly due to, we've all been calling this project 45 Nagog. But if you look at the plans, it also includes an adjacent parcel, also owned by the church, called 62 Non-Set Path. And you might gather by the name Non-Set Path that that's the parcel that's adjacent to the rest of the Nagog Woods condominium. And by leaving out that parcel and calculating the 300 feet abutters, we left out about a dozen households on Old Stonebrook and more than that on Pheasant Hill. So the list goes up from about 20 abutters to more than 50 abutters. And I'm certainly in favor of, now that I understand that it's an option, which I didn't know a few days ago, I'm certainly in favor of rescinding and redoing the hearing.
Okay, other comments? Yeah, if you care to put a motion up, and then we can take comments.
Mr. Chair, I move to rescind our decision of August 25th, 2025, and at that time that we approve the use special permit for 45 Nagog Park.
Second?
Thank you. Motion made and seconded. We'll open up for comments from the public. Please come forward and use your mic. Be a 3-minute time limit, and please identify, give us your name and your street address. Thank you.
Thank you, Better. My name is Liz Reinhardt. I am a resident of the Village of Nagog Woods, 160 Split Rock. I'm also this year the president of the Nagog Woods Community Corporation. We are a captive management company, and our voting members are all residents of the 4 associations in the village. I just briefly want to thank you for your prompt attention to our concerns about notice. We do support rescindment and hope the stop work order goes along with that. We do support a public hearing and anticipate that we'll share information with you then. We've already, on behalf of the village, filed a notice from our attorney with explaining the notice concerns, and also a summary on behalf of the village and the abutters within the village. The only other request I would make would be to consider some team from the town doing a site visit so that you can see from our perspective how the construction is impacting the village. And our village manager is Jude Marcotte. He's been in touch with the planning board, and we'd be happy to set up a meeting if you'd consider it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Leon Mintz, and I am from Nagog Woods, 646 Pheasant Hill. I was a little upset when I noticed all these trees cut. We reviewed the information, but it was not our land. We are building a racket club, not a cement factory after all. Marcus Lewis fulfilled all town requirements for construction to the letter. Fire department required emergency vehicle access road from non-set path. Considering that Marcus had to pay for every tree cut, I assume that not a single tree had been cut beyond requirements. Demand of the Nagog president and vice president are totally unreasonable. Stop work order will freeze this ugly construction site for a very long time. We plan to complete main construction before winter. Any stop order will leave this mess at least until summer. I understand when construction made a mistake by not installing fence immediately. On the other hand, claims that the tree removal was done with ravenous energy confirms that they didn't plan to drag a work forever, but plan to complete the work fast and move to landscaping. Actions of our president can result in expensive and useless litigation, but cannot restore cut trees. Directors do not understand the purpose of emergency vehicles road. This road will be used only if the main road from Nagog Mall is blocked or if fire trucks need second access to the club. That can happen very rarely or hopefully never. There will be no safety threat to our residents. Plans for this club include landscaping and planting of trees that will make it practically invisible from us. There will be no noise from the club, and after some time, no light. People will not park on non-set path. In worst case, one no parking sign will solve the problem. I see no problem if people will be walking between the club and Nagog Woods. Contrary to the claims in this letter, this club will be good for Acton. Many businesses abandoned Nagog Mall Road. A new tax-paying business servicing Acton residents will be beneficial for Acton. Also, the club will be paying for the use of the wastewater treatment plant that is owned by Nagog Woods. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Kate Chung. I'm forgetting my address, 254 Brown Bear Crossing. Just trying to understand, if we all as residents have ownership in Nagog, why would notification just be limited to the few residents on Pheasant Hill Lane and Old Stonebrook? Why wouldn't all residents be notified?
We'll try to get you an answer.
We're required to notify people that live within 300 feet. And we didn't do that properly initially. but we intend to do that this time. I think that there's certainly a lot of knowledge about the project in the neighborhood at this point, so hopefully the same concerns that happened last time won't happen this time.
So it's only residents who are notified, not owners? Because we all own collectively.
It's, the notification goes to the owners, yes.
So wouldn't that be everyone in Nagog?
It depends on how the owners association distributes information. We can get back to you on that
Okay.
specific point, but the hearing will be on the 17th at,
Okay.
do we have a time? 6:15, I believe.
Okay, I just was curious about the, the theory there. Thank you.
Can I add to that?
Alyssa?
So just to add a little bit of detail, state law requires notification goes to abutters and abutters within 300 feet of a parcel. So that's the answer to your question about, Jim mentioned earlier, the properties that are within that distance from the project.
And so the initial notice did go to the corporation that manages the whole neighborhood. So technically, the last one was sent to everyone because it went to the corporation. But I think what you're asking is, does everyone that has ownership of the common path, for example, get notified? Our planning staff can get back to you on that specific legal
Okay, and
question.
it's my understanding that the corporation didn't receive notification. It looked like it was mailed to them, but it was not received.
That's a mail, that's a US postal issue that I can't control, but.
Linda Orneska, longtime resident of Nagog Woods. Unfortunately, because of what's happened, a number of trees have been taken down, which are, they've been there a long time. And I hope you will make a site plan visit. And related to that, I noticed if you look up Google Earth and look, there is an aerial view of what it looked like and the number of trees that were there beforehand. And I think to see the contrast really gives you a sense of what a number of us are reacting to. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Martha Belden, and I'm the president of the Condo 3 Association. Mine is kind of a technical question. What is the regulation in effect in the town of Acton regarding fire lanes? Who has to have them? How many does it have to be? Where does it have to be? That's my question.
We can get back to you on that question. Thank you.
That would help. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michael Watkins. I live at 607 Old Stonebrook. And I appreciate considering the stop work order and getting a motion in line for that. I fully support it. I'm sure everybody from the village supports that. Just for contrast, I don't think I live within that limit, the 300-foot limit, but I found out, got a mail about the cell tower that's going up, which is probably further than this lot is from my unit, and the car dealership when all the permits were going through. So I'm just giving an example of two other projects in the neighborhood where I did receive notice, but not for this one. To the point of notifying the village, somebody told me that the notice went to our mail kiosk instead of the office. And the mail kiosk, in the past, we had a mail person there on premises, but a few years ago that changed, and there's nobody on premise to receive mail on behalf of the village at the kiosk. So mail needs to go to the office for the village. And I guess just because I didn't get notice, and the most of us didn't get notice, it was quite a shock to go get our mail, which is in in sight of all this and have this lot clear cut, essentially. And I had also, it's rumor to me, but it's my understanding the permits have not been approved yet. That's what I was told, but that the developer was given permission to go ahead and do the site work. And if that is true, I don't think that that's a condition that should be allowed going forward. The developers should have the completed permits with all the public input before they do any site work. And I will reserve other comments about the project until the hearing, which I plan to attend. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, David.
So just for clarification, the permits were approved. It's just that we improperly noticed people, or the notices were not correct because of it went around one parcel rather than both parcels. And so we're rescinding that approval tonight if we vote in favor.
Good evening. My name's Angela Valou. I live on 515 Tumbling Hawk, Village of Nagog Woods. I reviewed all of your meetings about the hearings that you had for this project, and I want to say I'm very impressed with all the questions that were asked because many of them were questions that I had, so thank you for doing your job. I do want to ask about who checks on compliance, so maybe the site visit that we've requested would do that, but regarding the trees, I've looked at some of the trees, and there's no way that they needed to be cut, and that was one of the conditions you placed on Marcus Lewis, to not cut every tree of a certain size if it didn't need to be cut. And I walked through there yesterday. The existing building has a L shape, and in that crook of the elbow, it must have been 20, 30 trees were cut, and you know they're not putting anything there. And also where the fire lane is supposed to go, there's trees at the very extreme edge, large 200-year-old trees that were cut. I don't think they needed to be cut. Of course, I don't know for sure. It didn't appear that way to me. So I don't think there is compliance with some of the things that you put forth as conditions. So I hope that you do come out and take a look and address that. And regarding the fire lanes, well, I don't know if I should say, but there are other options why only one path was considered rather than 2 or 3 other routes that he could have put a fire lane in that would be less disturbing to our community. It does seem that he's made this a thoroughfare on his website that says it's a quick walk from one of his facilities to the other, which is on our property. So I have a little bit of a problem with him using his business as a thoroughfare through our neighborhood. But I am a tennis player. I'm not opposed to a tennis facility. I just don't think it was done properly. And I hope that you guys look at it a little more closely. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we've got a motion that's been seconded to rescind these approvals. All in favor of rescinding the approvals, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, those approvals have been rescinded. We will be discussing this again at our meeting on November 17th in this room. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, we have some posted public hearings, which were supposed to have been noticed at 6:30. The first one, the Acton Select Board will hold a public hearing on November 3rd, 2025 at 6:30 PM, continued from October 6th, 2025, in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room 204 at the Town Hall, 472 Main Street, Acton, and virtually at actonma.gov/meeting/BOS on the application of Suburban Glass and Mirror for a site plan special permit under zoning bylaw section 10.4 at 60 Powder Mill Road. The proposed project consists of redesigning and expanding the existing parking lot. Application materials and how to participate remotely are available online and at Acton Town Hall, doc.actonma.gov/ds/web/view/collection-19076. The applicant has requested a continuation to December 1st, 2025.
Would you like a motion, Mr. Chair?
I would.
I move to continue this public hearing to December 1st, 2025 at 6:30 PM in this room.
Second.
Moved and seconded to continue. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Next, the Select Board will hold their annual tax classification hearing on November 3rd, 2025 at 6:30 PM, continued from October 20th, 2025 at 6:30 PM in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room 204 at Acton Town Hall, 472 Main Street. Select Board holds this hearing annually to vote on required tax levy allocation questions to determine if classes of taxable property will be taxed at the same rate or whether different tax rates shall be applied. These allocations are outlined in Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 56. Votes include the adoption of a residential factor, the residential exemption, the small commercial exemption, and the open space discount. The hearing will include a presentation by the Board of Assessors. Before we do that, though, since it's now 7 o'clock, under Mass General Law 140, Section 58, the Acton Select Board will hold a public hearing on November 3rd, 2025 at 7 PM in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room 204, Acton Town Hall, 472 Main Street, and by video conference and call in for a Class 2 auto dealer's license for Cars of Lebanon, located at 132 High Street, Acton, for a non-display internet-only sales. Login instructions for computers can be found here. From a computer, please click on the link to join the public meeting, acton.gov/meeting/SB, or from a telephone, dial 646-876-9923 and enter webinar ID number 503-918-785. Telephone users may dial *7 to request to speak after joining the meeting. Computer and app users may use the raise hand feature to request to speak. Is the applicant here? Please come forward.
Yes, my name is Antoine Lacouri from 132 High Street, applying for Cars of Lebanon. And my plan is to sell cars online.
Okay. Questions from my colleagues? David?
Hi, good evening. You're building another structure on your property, is that right?
Yeah, we're building a greenhouse, not a greenhouse, a sunroom.
Oh, okay, and that has nothing to do with this application?
No, nothing to do with that, no.
Okay, and
We did have this,
press again, it went off. There you go.
yeah, we did have this kind of license a few years ago. and we just operate online. We
Okay.
don't have nothing to do with it. I don't even go to the auction. I don't even meet the people. Just somebody will call me, tell me I need to use a license, and that use my license, and I get a percentage from it.
Okay, I just want to ask a couple of other things, just to confirm. You don't intend to park any cars on the property? But just, you keep shutting it off. The light comes on when it's on. There you go. Good.
Okay, yeah, I'm not planning to park any cars.
And you're not going to be servicing any cars, like
No,
changing
no,
oil
no,
or anything
absolutely
on the
not.
property?
No. No
Thank
car
you.
will be parked in my lot. I don't even see the people.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Hi, welcome. I just have a question about how online sales work, where you are connecting customers and sellers. Do you take on any liability for any issues with the vehicles that are sold, or does that liability remain with the seller?
When you buy a car from the auction, there's no liability on me, none at all.
Okay.
Just only the people using my license, and I get a percentage. I don't even involve with the money. I don't involve with anything. Just the person put a deposit, and this is my percentage. If he bid on it and he buy it, he's responsible for it. I don't have no responsibility, not whatever.
Okay, thank you for that.
No, thank you.
I just have a comment about the application, and I don't know if this is a change that we can make. I noticed that on page 2 of the license to sell motor vehicles application, the police chief and fire chief use a his pronoun, which is unfortunate with our current fire chief. The building commissioner and treasurer's office use their pronoun, and the zoning enforcement officer section has no pronoun. It's just written in a way that no pronoun is necessary. So I'm hoping that we might be able to update that, but I don't know what's involved in that. If staff can just go in and make that fix to an application, or if that requires board action. We can talk about it later,
Yep.
maybe.
We talk about it later.
Okay, fine.
Okay, other comments? Jim?
I'm very much in favor of this business. I'm glad there's creative ways for people to be employed and do business out of their homes. I was just curious about Cars of Lebanon, the name, and how you came up with the name.
I'm originally from Lebanon.
Okay.
And in the past, I used to buy car for people in Lebanon and ship them to over there. And this is how the company started.
Well, great, thank you. I like hearing the stories of the
Yes,
business
This
names.
is what it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
I would try to keep it as it is because I have it before. I have the license before. But I didn't use it for a few years. Thank you.
Fran?
Going to make a motion.
You may.
I move to approve a Class 2 auto dealer license for Cars of Lebanon, 132 High Street, Acton, Mass., for non-display internet-only sales.
Second?
Okay, moved and seconded.
Want to call for public comment first?
Sure.
Okay?
Are there any public comments? Appears not. Okay, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you very much. You're all
Thanks a
set.
lot. Thank you.
Okay, we have one more hearing is scheduled for 7:10, and I can't announce it yet because it's not yet 7:10, so we'll let the assessor begin his presentation, knowing that you'll be interrupted in 2.5 minutes.
All right, thank you, Dean. Hello, Select Board. Good to see you all again. My name is CJ Carroll. I'm the Principal Assessor here in Acton. Been here, I believe, about 2.5 years. Today, I'll be presenting to you the tax classification hearing on behalf of the Board of Assessors, Carol Leipner-Strebnick, who's the chair, and Leo Falkman. On the agenda today, we have what is a classification hearing. I'll go over a little bit what we do each year around this time. changes in property valuations and average tax bills, as I've done in the past few years. And then we'll move on to the 4 votes that are levy allocation votes. The first is whether to adopt an open space discount, whether to adopt a small commercial exemption, whether to adopt a residential factor, and whether to adopt a residential exemption. So we'll get started first, talking a little bit about what is a classification hearing. So the purpose of the classification hearing is following the certification of values by the Massachusetts DOR. The assessors provide you all, the select board, with the data necessary to make the votes that I just mentioned to allocate the tax levy. And then, at that time, it is always a good opportunity to present you with changes in valuation, changes in tax bills, and answer any questions related to those things that you might have. So tax classification is the allocation of the tax levy among the 4 classes of property, those classes being residential, commercial, industrial, and personal property. So the annual property assessment process, this year it was called a certification year. So every 5 years, the state comes in and I think the best way to put it is they audit our system. So I do thank you all for continuing the meeting. We needed just a little bit more time for them to finish that up. But as of October 24th, this year, we did get values certified. At that point, we did the public disclosure of values. You may have seen that. It was a news flash. It was also available at a few spots throughout town. That is part of the certification of values that happens once every 5 years. So in terms of those values, Mass General Law requires that assessors value properties annually as of January 1st of each year by reviewing sales in town from the prior calendar year. So in this case, the fiscal 2026 values took into account 2024 sales. The assessors are required to, by law, to value property at 100% of full and fair cash value every year. And these values are certified by the Mass Department of Revenue. And that's a part, really kind of the first step of the tax rate recapitulation process, the tax recap. All right. So the average valuations. This chart shows the trends in what's happened this past year in values, as well as on the far right there, you can kind of see and compare how last year's fiscal year changes looked. Single-family residences, we're looking at about a $938,000 average single-family value. That's up just short of $68,000 from last year, 7.81%. That's a higher percentage increase than we saw in single families, specifically last year. Last year was a relatively low year for single-family increases when compared to other recent years. Condominiums, on the other hand, decreased slightly in their assessment increase. They are now at $554,000 on average, which is almost $46,000 more than last year for a 9% increase. Commercial only increased 2.1. Personal property increased about 5. And then industrial, you'll notice, I did put that little asterisk there. The reason that you're seeing a negative industrial value change is not necessarily because industrial values decreased. That is because we did reclassify some solar property that it is on industrial lots, but it is typically best practice to have those on separate taxable parcels. So that's more of a technicality that went down. It didn't actually impact the town's industrial taxable value. It's more of a classification difference. One thing I want to note is that the percent changes you see here versus the percent changes that you may have seen in the proposed values during the disclosure process do differ slightly. It's a percent here or there, and the reason for that is because the state calculations, they sent those calculations to us. In those, medians are typically used, and only previously taxed property is used. The reason for that primarily is the state wants to look at trends, and they want to see how our values are changing, whereas these numbers that I calculated here are more for the purpose of calculating average tax bills and looking at how the values have changed from previous years. So I just wanted to address that in case anybody looked back at those numbers and they didn't match up exactly. It's because the way of calculating is slightly different. And then the asterisk there on fiscal 25 that you see under personal property, just as a reminder, that was the personal property minimum that I came to you all with for fiscal 25, where only personal property accounts over $2,500 in value are taxed. All right, so talk about tax bills. So for our primary class, single-family homes, the average tax bill for fiscal 25 was $14,918. For fiscal 26, it's going to be $15,220 for a fairly standard increase of $302, which is a 2% increase. That is pretty significantly reduced from fiscal 25, and the reason for that is the override that we saw in fiscal 25. 6.6% increase isn't typically standard. That's because of the levy override that we did. We already went over some value changes in the previous slide. That tax rate, so we're looking at a 1623 tax rate. As always in the classification hearing, this is a proposed tax rate because this classification hearing is one of the things that needs to be done before the state will give us a tax rate. So just a reminder, that could change as the recap is finalized. It is very close to what it will be if it's not exact, but just a reminder that that tax rate is proposed, not yet finalized. For the commercial tax bill, we're seeing a not terribly common decrease. The reason for that is because, as you can see, the tax rate is going down quite a bit. The values overall are up, which does create that decrease. There is also some debt falling off. And then, so we have a tax bill of $21,000, or $21,254 for fiscal 26. That's down from the $21,997 from fiscal 25. Just to give a little bit more context about the votes, I'll go through them and we can do some questions if you have any regarding the 4 votes. And then after that, I do have slides on the votes themselves. So we can just run through them and get some details first. The first is to adopt an open space discount. This one's fairly simple. Acton has no parcels classified as open space. The reason for that is the majority of parcels that could qualify for open space are typically in something else like Chapter 61 or an APR restriction. That's oftentimes typically considered a more productive classification of properties of that type. Vote number 2, whether or not to adopt a small commercial exemption. So the way this one works is it reduces the taxable value of eligible businesses up to 10%. These eligible businesses are determined by the Department of Workforce Development. The criteria they use is that valuation must be less than $1 million, and the business must have no more than 10 employees on average. Outside of this Department of Workforce Development list, the assessors can use their discretion to grant any other eligible businesses that are not on the list the exemption. And the levy for commercial and industrial class remains the same if this is put in place. So a new effective tax rate is calculated, and then the commercial and industrial parcels that do not qualify for this would end up paying that slightly increased tax rate to make sure that the levy burden for that class of properties remain the same despite some of them having a decrease in tax burden. 14 of 351 Massachusetts communities have this implemented. The third is whether or not to adopt a residential factor. This is also called a split tax rate. Creating a split tax rate shifts the levy burden similar to how I just described, where, except that this shift is between classes, not within a class. So the residential and CIP, which is commercial, industrial, personal property classes, if a single tax rate is kept, are responsible for their own relative burden of the tax levy. But Acton could shift up to 50% of additional taxes to the CIP class. The residential factor does have a minimum of 0.65, meaning that residential does always need to pay at least 65% of their relative tax burden, but because of the significant residential value versus commercial value in Acton, you could never get to 65%. So just to give a little bit of context as to how this works, if the residential levy were to go from 100 million to 95 million, which would be a 0.95 factor to split the rate, then that $5 million from the residential levy would be attached to the CIP levy, bringing their levy burden from 8 million to 13 million. So the tax rate for CIP would be significantly impacted for a relatively small savings for the average residential. The reason for this drastic effect is a 90.4 to 9.6 ratio of value in Acton that is slightly weighted toward residential more than last year. Last year was almost exactly a 90-10 split. This is just a chart. This is a screenshot of a tool that the DOR has to show what a split tax rate would look like for the community, and I've highlighted, it goes by $50,000 increments, so it's not exactly what the average values that we just discussed are, but it's the closest thing on this chart. So if we were to shift the burden, I believe this is either a 5 or 10% shift, but it would be a savings of $55 for the average condominium owner and $95 for the average single-family owner, and it would represent almost a $1,200 additional tax burden on the commercial side. All of those are for averages. The fourth and probably most complicated vote is the residential exemption. So the way that this works is that a percentage is voted by the select board if this is adopted, and that percent of the average residential value in town is exempt from every qualifying property in town. Then a new tax rate is calculated, and from there, that increased tax rate applied to the partially exempted property values allows for lower value properties to have a lower tax bill and higher value properties to have a higher tax bill. The reason for that is because, let's see, I have a number example here, I believe. So a $200,000 property would see, this is with a 10% reduction. A $200,000 property would see a 25% value reduction because of a $50,000 exemption. A $1 million property would see, with that same $50,000 exemption, would be valued at $950,000. So relatively, that $50,000 reduction would be a much smaller reduction for the higher value property. Let's see, so this is often confused with other means-tested programs, and I think, that conversation's come up in past years as well, but it is based only on the value of the property, not the needs of the owner. 19 communities have adopted this as of last year, and about half of those communities also adopt a split tax rate. The reason for this is because it's typically adopted by metropolitan areas, vacation communities, folks with second homes who would not qualify because it's owner-occupied properties only, or it does shift tax burden, to a large landlord or corporation who may manage larger properties in that way. Any questions?
Any questions from my colleagues? It appears not.
All right.
Oh, Alyssa.
Thank you, CJ. Can you say the number of communities once more that have adopted the small commercial exemption. I think you listed, you said it, but it's not in
Yeah.
the slide.
I believe it's 14 as of now. Well, so as of last year, number will change as every community does their classification hearing, but I believe the most up-to-date number was 14.
Okay.
Yep.
I heard 314 out of
Oh, no.
351.
No,
I'm
it's-
glad I
it's 14.
asked. Okay, so only 14 in Massachusetts. I guess the only comment I would make is, it's interesting that the commercial tax bill, the average commercial tax bill went down. So don't ever say your taxes can't go down.
Fran?
CJ, does the state offer something like this at the state level for small businesses?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
I think they might.
Okay.
Like some sort of tip program. So I just wondered how interesting it would be to adopt something like that.
Yeah,
at
I'd be
a
curious to
town level.
learn.
Yeah,
Definitely.
thank you.
David?
If we were to consider a residential exemption, do you already know whether all the properties in town are owner occupied? Or is that information we'd have to gather?
That's information that we would likely find out through people applying.
Oh, I see, so you'd have to apply for in theory, if we voted for it, then individual property owners would have to apply and.
As far as I know, I guess I've never worked for a community with a residential exemption. I believe that at least in the first year, everyone would need to apply.
Okay, yeah, it's not something would do automatically.
I'm not sure, there may be something to implement like that, but I'm not aware of it. I don't know how to actually administrate this. I'm not aware of it.
That kind of answers
currently.
my question, because I was wondering how you would know.
You
So,
sure, yeah. I would think a high percentage, very high.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
Jim?
Thanks for explaining this again. I always appreciate it. I always, yet at the same time, I always end up in the same place, which is, we don't have these now, there's problems with any of them, let's not do any of them. But there'll be a series of votes about that.
Alyssa?
I just have one additional question. Do we have any information about the reasoning behind the lower increase in value for the commercial properties?
There's not particular reasoning. That's something that if you look at recent years, has been a trend. Sale prices are high for residential, and those, along with income data, are considered for commercial valuations. And when you look at the income data and the sales in commercial, it's simply is not increasing at the rate that residential is.
And when you say trend, do you mean for Acton or for the region or for the whole state or for the country?
I can speak definitively to Acton,
Yep.
but I can say fairly confidently that it's at least regional too.
Okay, thank you.
David?
This is just out from my own curiosity, but other people may also be curious. If a business in town turns over and is, let's say, more successful, does the value of their property taxes themselves remain the same and only the personal property go up? Or if a business is more successful, does the value of the business go up and therefore their taxes go up?
That's a good question. So when I talk income-based, when speaking about commercial and industrial property values, that's income on income-producing properties. So it's property owners who lease to typically businesses. As far as a business being successful, that may be indirectly reflected in their personal property valuation through the equipment that they own and use. But a company's success and income would not impact their real estate value. It would only impact the real estate value if the lease or however that property owner were charging, whoever were using the property, if that were to increase, the income in that way.
Okay, I believe we have at least one caller online that has some questions. Do we have an online question?
Yes, this is Tara Fredericks from up here in Mass Ave, and I have a couple questions and a comment. The first question is that this $2,500 point, can the town change that? And if so, what does it take to do that? Because I'm interested in more progressive taxation and like the minimum level car to, have reliable enough to go to a job is in the order of like 10,000, and that's probably somebody that doesn't make a whole lot of money. So I'm thinking that we could make that 15,000 and raise the tax rate so that the people with the huge luxury cars are not only paying more because they could afford it, but paying more because they're probably I don't know if they are, but spending more on gas, et cetera. So I'd like to get the answer about the 2,500, and I have another question and then a comment.
DJ?
Thanks for the question. So this doesn't have to do with motor vehicle excise. It's personal property for businesses in town.
Okay, then still, I'd like to get that to be higher and to have the rate increase dramatically so that people have more money can pay. And then I'd like to also explore a way to, I'm good, by the way, I'm good with a split rate. I just want to figure out how to minimize the impact to small businesses. And one way, and I hope this is possible, that we can have categories whereby like huge companies get taxed large and the small businesses get taxed small. And if you do it by square feet or number of employees, that would be an equitable way to do that so that you get like a TJ Maxx or CVS that's owned internationally, so that the money isn't getting sucked out of, everybody pays money to these companies and like 10% or 8% or whatever the numbers say, stays local and the rest of it gets sucked out. Whereas if you pay money to a local business, then most of that money, 80% of it stays local. So the companies that are owned by international companies, I think there's an opportunity there to charge them more in taxation. And I hope that we'll explore some progressive taxation techniques in the next year if you don't decide to adopt them tonight. And I will note that there are a lot of towns, in particular, I can talk about Air, that has a split rate. The businesses didn't run away, and they have more money to spend on things like affordable housing. So I will take my answer offline. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I believe that we need to take some actions on this. Do we have draft motions?
Yes. So the slides after the question slide are draft motions. And the first vote is whether or not to adopt an open space discount. Your options are 1, do not adopt an open space discount, or 2, to adopt an open space discount of up to 25% of Class 2 open space levy.
I move to not adopt an open space discount.
Second.
Moved and seconded to not adopt an open space discount. Any discussion? Not, I'll call the question. All in favor of that motion to not adopt an open space discount, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we will not adopt that.
The second vote is whether or not to adopt a small commercial exemption. The options are 1, do not adopt a small commercial exemption, or 2, determine and adopt an exemption percentage of 10% or less.
I move to not adopt a small commercial exemption.
Second.
Moved and seconded to not adopt a small commercial exemption. Any questions, comments? All in favor of the motion to not adopt a small commercial exemption, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we will not adopt that.
The third item is whether to adopt a residential factor. The options are: 1, adopt a residential factor of 1. This would be no shift, and all property would be taxed at the same rate. Or 2, to determine and adopt a residential factor of less than 1, shift the tax rate and increase the CIP percentage of the tax levy.
I move to adopt a residential factor of 1.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adopt a residential factor of 1. Any comments? All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, residential factor of 1 is set.
The fourth item is whether or not to adopt a residential exemption. The options are: do not adopt a residential exemption, or do not implement a residential exemption, or to determine and adopt a residential exemption that reflects a specific percentage of the average residential value.
I move to not implement a residential exemption.
Second.
Moved and seconded to not implement a residential exemption. Any questions? All in favor of the motion?
David? Yeah.
David?
So of the 5 questions, this is one that I would consider. I'm not, insistent on it, but I think that it, favors our, the homeowners that own the small condos especially. The difference, a small residential exemption would not affect single-family homeowners that much, but would make a big difference for small properties. And I also think it's interesting that they have to be owner-occupied, which means, firms that invest in renting housing would, be taxed at the full value of the house, whether that's an Airbnb or some other rental. And I think that's also fair as a business as opposed to someone's primary residence. So I just put that out there. Of the 5 of these things, this is one that I would consider. CJ said 19 communities, I think, have done this. So it's a little bit complicated. We'd be making more work for CJ to figure out how people would apply for it and to figure out what we needed to ask them. Another thing that we could do is, vote not to do this year, but maybe indicate that we might want to do it in a future year, such that maybe some of those that we could prepare for doing it.
Alyssa?
I just wanted to remind the board that one of the projects that I've been working on is following the work of the Concord's Tax Relief Task Force. So I've met with a couple of members. I've tried to attend some of their meetings. I have a list of questions after listening to their discussions, and I've asked the town manager to sometime meet with CJ to get answers to those questions if he has them. So I'm hoping that at some point in the near term, I can provide a report on an agenda to the board, because that might inform us the work that other communities are doing. They're not only looking at their residential exemption that they adopted, but other communities and what kinds of tax relief programs other communities have. So I think that they like meeting with me. They've also met with select board representatives from other towns. So we might have the information that we need to pursue this, or we might decide that we need to set up our own task force.
David?
Again, I'm fine with delaying it if that's what the board wants to do, but I'll say that in this year where federal heating assistance has gone away, people who, have to pay to heat their homes, smaller homes where they're likely to be lower income, that's going to be a bigger burden this winter. And it's just something to consider. Again, I'm fine waiting for, like I said, prep for next year, including, and especially Alyssa's report to us, but I just throw that out there.
Thank you. Jim?
Yeah, I also look forward to a report on this from Melissa and her research. I will say that one of among the reasons that I'm inclined against this is that value of house is not necessarily closely related to the financial means of the people that live in it. I think the most important example here is going to be large apartment buildings, which won't be able to participate in this, but their taxes will go up, and that will presumably get passed on to the renters. So that's a concern I have. It may be that we could deal with that in the design of the program. I don't know how much flexibility there is. The other two classes of people that I'm concerned about are people with larger families often need larger houses, but that doesn't mean that they have more means to pay. And the last concern of mine is larger houses occupied by empty nesters who don't have the financial means to absorb the rise in taxes that would be caused by reducing the taxes of people living in smaller houses.
Thank you. I believe we have a motion on the table to not, oh, okay, I believe we have one question online. Go ahead. Okay, apparently not. We'll take the vote. It's been moved and seconded to not implement a residential.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Yes, I just hope that you do the more progressive taxation with the residents, the out-of-town people paying the non-owners that are having rental properties. I think that people should do that. I know it would probably come back in rent increases, but I feel like it's time to do something. I also like this idea that David was talking about, and I hope that you do that now and not just, it's a lot of privileged people in this process, and they may not realize how much of a difference it makes. And so I hope you do it now and not wait a year. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll proceed with the vote. All in favor of the motion to not implement a residential exemption, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we will not implement a residential exemption. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, CJ.
So before we go any further, I have another notice to read. Find it. Here we go. The Acton Select Board will hold a public hearing on November 3rd, 2025 at 7:10 p.m., continued to October 6th, 2025, in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room, room 204 at Town Hall, 472 Main Street, Acton, and virtually at actonma.gov/meeting/SB on the application of Hawthorne Realty Company for a site plan special permit under zoning bylaw section 10.4. The applicant proposes to combine the properties at 471 Great Road and 465 to 469 Great Road and construct two buildings to be used as building trade shops. No hazardous materials or waste are to be generated on site. Application materials and how to participate remotely are available online and at Acton Town Hall, doc.actonma.gov/view/collection-19387. The applicant is requested to continue to December 15th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. I have a motion.
I move to continue this public hearing until December 15th at 6:30 p.m. in this room.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor of continuing until December 15th, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we will continue that. So, next up on the agenda is item 4, approved letter of support for foreign trade zone for Methods Machines at 976 Main Street.
Thank you. For this item, Patricia Costa, our Economic Development Director, is going to provide a brief overview of what a foreign trade zone is and why Methods Machine is interested in pursuing one.
Good evening. I was recently contacted by a representative of Methods Machine Tools. They have been in business for many years, since the 1980s in Acton, and since the 1950s as an operating business. And the company is established at 976 Main Street. They own the facility, and their scope of activity consists of importing machinery and customizing machinery here in Acton to distribute to many different segments, but mostly automotive and medical industry. So their model of business consists of bringing this equipment to the United States, customizing it, and then selling it. So it creates a very long operational cycle for them. And given the context of increase in tariffs and uncertainties surrounding tariffs in particular, and the fact that the machine, that the equipment that they import and customize here is made basically of steel and aluminum, it has posed a very high burden on the company. And they see the establishment of a foreign trade zone as an opportunity for them to bring the equipment tax-free and defer the payment of these tariffs, which would be very beneficial for the company at this moment. So I had a site visit last week, and I prepared the report, which I submitted previously to the appreciation of the select board as some elements to support the establishment of this foreign trade zone. It would create new jobs in the midterm, and it would also enhance Acton as a business-friendly town, opening opportunities for other businesses with the same scope, businesses that potentially depend on these foreign materials and equipment, to also see Acton as an opportunity to establish their businesses. We have here today, I just want to bring to your attention that we have here Kevin Saho, the controller of Methods Machine Tools, to provide you with any additional information that is deemed necessary.
Thank you. Questions from my colleagues? Alyssa.
Thank you, Patricia. I don't have any questions. I'm fully in support of establishing this foreign trade zone. It makes sense to have the company be able to realize the income from the sales before they are forced to pay the taxes and the tariffs. And there's a lot of unpredictability and uncertainty. So I'm definitely wanting us to be supportive of businesses generally, but also business that's been in the town for so many decades. Thank you for this report. Thanks for the site visit, and hopefully we can, maybe if this gets approved, the word will get out and we can have more companies pursuing that.
Thank you. David.
Thank you. Once established, can the foreign trade zone be used for anything in their business? It doesn't have to be the machinery that they do now. If they went into another area of business, they could import something and then sell it and pay the tariffs at that time. Is that right?
My understanding is that this process will make the company still focused on what they currently do. It will not allow for them to go much beyond the scope that they currently have, because as part of the process of establishment of a foreign trade zone, the Border Protection has to inspect their facilities, so everything has to be according to what they have now. It will not imply any substantial change in what they are currently doing, nor, which is very important, any immediate increase in the footprint that they currently have. So it will not generate any logistics changes in terms of logistics or vehicles or a movement of equipment or materials into the facility and out of the facility. They will basically operate the same way that they operate now.
Thank you. Other questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion. David?
I move to approve or recommend the foreign trade zone for method machines at 976 Main Street.
Second?
Moved and seconded to recommend foreign trade zone for methods machine tools. All in favor? Jim?
Just want to make sure we're getting the right motion. There was a particular letter that had already been drafted. Or perhaps we're also approving the sending of that letter. If that could be a friendly amendment.
Sure, that would be fine.
Okay.
And I second that amendment.
Okay, can I just make a comment on that, now that you remind me of that, on that letter? Throughout the letter, it says "we," but in the first paragraph, it says "I." And I think the first paragraph should say, "The Select Board recommends," and then say "we." But right now, it says, it's from Dean, and it says "I" in the first paragraph and "we" in all the other paragraphs. So
make sure it's properly edited.
Maybe we could, as part of this motion, say that we endorse the sending of the letter in the packet with any edits that the chair thinks are appropriate.
Go ahead.
So I was going to make a similar suggestion for an edit to say on behalf of the board as the opening. There's also a slight change, and I do not see it right now. I wrote it down. Sorry. It's just a grammatical. It's in the second paragraph on the second line. It says such inventory is sourced from countries as far as, so I just think we need to put away, as far away as Germany, Japan, and Taiwan. So that was the second edit that I was hoping we could put in there.
Make sure it's properly edited. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, we've got an amended motion that's been seconded. All in favor of the amended motion, the impact of which is to send the letter properly edited. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patricia.
Item 5, presentation of preliminary level service estimates and capital needs for FY 2027.
Thank you. We have this printed out for you because it didn't make it into the packet because we just finished it this afternoon. But no looking ahead. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. You can look ahead. We kicked off the budget. So this is a presentation of the budget requests and the capital needs. And I will get right into it. So if you recall, in August, we presented to the board a budget preview. We said, this is what's going on with the budget that we just approved. This is what we're thinking for the coming year. And by the way, here's a revenue update on where we're at for revenues. And that leads us to the next step in the process where we had departments submit budget requests. They were actually due a few weeks ago. In the last few weeks, we've been meeting with each department head individually in reviewing what they had requested in their budget submittal, both for capital items and for just the operating budget items. This year, I gave some direction that we should do our best to find ways to deliver services without any increases in areas that don't absolutely need increases. And they did their best to bring that forward. Just to calibrate us to our timeline here, as I mentioned, we did the budget preview. CJ just did the tax classification hearing, and the board just approved the motions needed for that. We're doing the budget updates. 2 weeks from tonight, we'll be presenting the capital improvement plan and an update on the preliminary budget estimates. 2 weeks after that, we'll be meeting with the board again after you've received that information and asking you if you have any suggestions for prioritization, because about a month later, I'll be presenting the town manager's recommended budget and capital plan. So as we did the last few years, we're providing multiple presentations about the budgets and about the capital needs so that the board members have a lot of time to think about what we're asking for, how, and then as we spend the next month and a half figuring out how we're going to pay for things, we're able to get input from all of you about what's most important to you in the coming year and in the 10-year plan. So, and then we have scheduled in the books, and I need to follow up with the Finance Committee Chair because we'd like to invite the Finance Committee to attend the 11/17 presentation, the 1/5/2026 presentation, and of course, the joint budget workshops with the Select Board and Finance Committee that we'll do in this room, where all departments will come forward and talk about all the exciting and important things they do and why they need the budgets that they've requested. And all that needs to be sorted out for the board to adopt a budget to submit to the Finance Committee by the first week of March. So pretty typical process, and we started early, and I think what we frame our budgets in is the goals that you establish, particularly the short-term goals, of which, you know, they're posted on the website, and we also copied them in this presentation just as a reference. But this is what the board prioritized as the things that need to happen. Number one, I don't remember if they're ordered by priority, but there's only 5 of them, so they're all important in my mind as short-term goals. And then if you look at long-term goals on the next page, we have those in mind too. As we prepare our budget requests, we're making sure that if there's a way to address these long-term goals in the coming year, we find a way to work that in or to work towards that. So the goals that you set are a big part of the budgets that we bring forward. So let's get right to it. The requests that we have, that we've received from departments are listed here. This is not a recommended spending plan. This is the requests that we received that are big enough to be considered for borrowing projects. So the Town Hall HVAC replacement, that's a project that you're familiar with. We are continuing that work. We have design underway. We've applied for a grant that I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll get something from, and we'll continue to advance that with the board's support. The fire apparatus, it seems like we're asking for a new one every year. It's because we are. But it's not because we necessarily need them all right now. It's just because of the lead times to get these pieces of equipment. For some reason, it takes multiple years to have an engine delivered. So, for example, we approved a ladder truck in 2024, and it's going to be delivered in 2028. So this is something that I think we have on the docket for needing to be replaced in the next 4 years, and so that's why we're asking for it now. If the town meeting, you know, if you decide not to put that on the list, we could ask for it yet next year. It wouldn't be that far behind, but we need to think far in advance with these things. The next item is the Public Works facility. I think the last meeting of the board was some initial direction on how to move forward with the design after the peer review that was recommended by the DPW committee. We have a path forward for what the design should look like now. And so additional funding is needed to take that to be in a position to go out to bid and seek construction pricing. As always, our Public Works Department is heavily interested in implementing complete streets. And every year we ask for funding to continue improving intersections and sidewalks and other things like that. A new ambulance is needed. The lead times for ambulances are not as long as engines, but they're long enough that we also need to authorize another one, even though we had one authorized just a year ago. Stormwater program, I think there's a lot of knowledge about this, the need for stormwater infrastructure. It's been reported to this board and in the study that we need to invest $800 to $1 million a year over the next several years to catch up on our infrastructure. In practice, it's hard to spend that money that fast. I think we're finding ways to just ask for what we think we can actually spend in a given year. And so we're asking for $700 to add to the stormwater management program. Same thing with sidewalks. We have a need for millions and millions of dollars worth of sidewalks, but we can't practically do all that work. So we're asking for money to continue advancing the work that we've been doing to add sidewalks and improve sidewalks in the community. And then finally, for borrowing, the HVAC system at the public safety facility is nearing end of life, and we are working on design for replacement of that, which we'd like to do in the next few years. This funding would help with starting that process. So that's $9.5 million worth of investments that were identified just for borrowing. This is not, I think every year we have a number similar to this, and every year it's reduced to a number that we know we need to do and that is supported. The next two slides are additional projects that are smaller in nature, typically happen every year and would be funded from sources such as free cash. And these projects we wouldn't borrow for. We would pay for them outright with funds appropriated. So police cruiser replacements, those we used to be able to do, you used to be able to do 5 cruisers for $250,000. Now I don't think we could even do 4 for $250,000, but that's the plan, is to try to. Building envelope and interior improvements, we are working hard to try to improve the way that our buildings are maintained, and that requires investment. Similarly, our IT infrastructure has been going through some major changes, and we've identified significant needs for rebuilding some of the core components, core switching, routing enclosure replacements. Those are things that need to happen because equipment is reaching end of life, and it's the backbone to the work that all of our departments do. A fire command vehicle is also on the list. Roof design, more radios, replacing fire escapes at fire stations. The next page would be the Town Hall bell tower. I announced recently that we no longer are hearing the chimes of the bell tower from the clock because when our structural engineer was up there doing some conceptual design work, it happened to be, I think, 11 o'clock, and the 11 bells that chimed really shook the structure and made them nervous because of some rot they observed. And so they said, we shouldn't have this thing chiming anymore until we sort out some structural components. So that's something that I think would be a good CPC project, but you never know if there's funding available in that program, so we have it here because it needs to happen. Other things, this is another IT thing, and then the fireworks. This is something that if we don't get funding for the fireworks, then we wouldn't be able to have the celebration. And then these other things are self-explanatory. So in all, $1.1 million worth of project funding requests that I think some of them could be funded from alternative sources besides free cash, but I think the bulk of them would be funded from free cash if approved. Okay, so one of the projects that I mentioned was the DPW facility, and this is just sort of, because we're doing a budget presentation, I didn't want to miss the opportunity to just codify what the direction that we received from the board on how to move this forward. So online, there's a whole page dedicated to this project, actonma.gov/DPW facility, all one word. And on there, we've published the peer study report that Arrow Street Consultants did. The building committee and the select board reviewed that information and selected one of the options, which is labeled 4B. That doesn't mean much to people if they don't know the other options, but basically what the design concept that we've moved forward with is, instead of what we brought forward last year, which was to build an entirely new building with spaces for office administration, mechanics, et cetera, and then a big apparatus garage for the DPW equipment, we're going to instead build a new building next to the existing building that will just be for staffing, mechanics, and shops. And then we'll use the existing building, retrofit it in a way to increase the amount of vehicle storage that we have in there now. So this is it's a compromise proposal. Instead of getting a brand new space for trucks, we're going to reuse an old space for trucks and make it work. And then we'll have a new space for some of the more modern needs that you have in an office and a workshop environment. We think we can do the design needed for that for $900,000, which would include the funding we need for just also the designer and also the owner's project manager, because we just spent 6 months taking a detour, and we've needed services of the owner's project managers along the way. So that's the update on DPW. Also included in departmental requests were staffing requests. These are not included in the actual budget proposals that I'll show you on the next slide, but these are things that are identified outside of the budget process that are needed by our departments to continue delivering services the way that they believe meets the expectations of our residents, the service levels that our residents expect in ways that we're able to provide them. So social work is something that there's a focus on in Health and Human Services. Also, the 30 Sudbury facility has a pretty active kitchen with our Meals on Wheels program, which produces hundreds of meals a week to distribute to the community. We also have the Senior Center Cafe, and we have various other activities that happen in that kitchen. And our COA director has been managing that, but it's become a pretty big part of her week, and it might be better to have someone more dedicated to focusing on that on a daily basis. So that's another one. We have beautiful Arboretum just down the street, where we've relied very heavily on volunteers. Since it was built, we've relied very heavily on volunteers. We believe that that's not a sustainable model for the future. And so adding a part-time seasonal position to help with some of the work that goes on over there is something that we think that we need to do. If not this year, then we need to do it very soon. And then, as I mentioned, IT has been, we sort of rebuilt a lot of things with the IT department this year. And with the new systems, we have some new requirements. So that's what that is. Our police department has a lot of new people. I don't know the exact breakdown, but definitely more than half of the people that are in the department have been here less than 5 years. And so that with that amount of people, there's a need to increase supervision, just so to help people with training and all the work that goes on. So the police department is asked to add a sergeant to help with that supervision. As you recall, we added a lieutenant last year. That was for supervision, but also a lot of the administrative work that has to happen in a police department. This ad would be more for the supervisory needs that we have out there on the streets on a daily basis. And then the last one is the fire department, who continues to request staffing increases to serve the community the way that the chief believes we need staffing, particularly if we're going to be running out of 4 stations. This is a staffing model that she believes we would need to implement to do that on a long-term basis. If you recall, we added 1 firefighter position last year, which helped us build out the shifts a little bit better to help with coverage. This would be adding more people to each shift and adding more supervision to each shift so that every station has a supervisor in it. So those are things that, in total there's a pretty significant amount of staffing requests. Again, we look at that. I focus heavily on looking at grants and reorganizations. If there's a way that we can fund some of these things by moving people around or changing the way our existing roles are, that's a win because we meet an emerging need without adding to our headcount. There may be a few opportunities here to do that, but not for all of these things. So here's the operating budget request. It's a little bit difficult to read. I printed it out for you. This is basically, the orange column is what was requested. And in total, the requests increased by 5%, 5.5%. That's a number that's not unusual for this point in the budget process. I'm fairly confident that we can make some adjustments to this to bring this closer to what revenue we actually have available. But I just wanted to have on record the department's requests so that the needs that are identified are clear to people. And just like we do every year, the columns that go to the right of this orange column or yellow column will be different based on prioritization that we get from the board and the work that we do to try to find ways to reduce costs, because we don't have this funding. A big item that I wanted to talk about, and I mentioned this at the August budget preview, is health insurance. We've had some pretty volatile, we've had a lot of things happen with health insurance that's created some budget challenges for us. If you look at this chart, the blue bars that are going vertical are the budgeted amounts we had for health insurance over the last several years. And then the red line is the actual expenditure on health insurance over the last few years. And things are going fine until 2024. And that's when we had the significant spike in costs. It was a 22.8% increase plus a one-time payment of, I think it ended up being $228,000 or something like that. All that came out of the budget that year. So we said, whoa, we need to make sure our budget next year covers this spike that we've seen. For several reasons, the increase in the budget that we had we didn't need all of it. The actual for health insurance in FY25 was, I think, $600,000 to $700,000 less than what we budgeted. One of the primary factors to that was the opt-outs. We offered a new opt-out incentive, and that shifted, I think, 6 individuals and 12 families to opt out. So that resulted in almost $300,000 in savings. That was one thing. The other thing, which I think has been mentioned in other forums, is that we had a lot of vacancies last year in FY25, and when you have a vacant position that you budgeted $25,000 to $30,000 in health insurance for, and there's no position, then that money is returned back at the end of the year. We didn't know that, right, until June of this year. Going through the budget process for FY26, we had presented all of that information over the winter, and town meeting approved it in May, before we had a true handle on our full cost for health insurance. But as you can see, if you look at what's budgeted in the current fiscal year versus what the actual is, I think there's some capacity in there to absorb increases in other areas because of health insurance. There's also a capacity to potentially look at how we fund OPEB. So in the budget proposal for FY27, even though we're getting a 15% increase for actives and a 53, I think, increase for retirees, we didn't increase the budget by that amount because of the capacity that we know we have in the health insurance budget. We've increased it a little bit. We're continuing to do some analysis to see if we can actually reduce that even more in FY27, but it's a little early for us to do that right now. So that's some kind of good news about something that's been a big challenge for us over the last few years. And then debt service. This is another item that I really wanted to call to your attention. We've made a lot of investments in capital in the last few years, and a lot of those were borrowing projects. So those debt service amounts, we have the first year covered from a free cash appropriation, but then when the second payment is due, it has to come from our operating budget. And so if you look at this chart, it starts in FY '26, which is the current year. The bottom column is excluded debt. That's, I think, entirely the North Acton Fire Station. The green, which is the next level, is all the debt that's been inside the levy that we've borrowed for over the last 7, 8, or 9, 10 years. And then the red is the amount that we owe to the sewer fund based on the settlement with W.R. Grace 20 years ago. And then if you look at, so that amount is going up almost 25% in FY '27, and that's fixed costs that we know. So even if we approve no other projects, that's what our costs are going to be in FY '27. And then if you look at 28 and beyond, that yellow amount is the amount of debt service that we've already authorized, but we haven't borrowed for yet. So this is a conservative amount that we've projected in here. It's based on 4.25% on a maximum term level payments. There's a chance that we do better than this, but this is what we have on the books going forward. So anything that we add to our debt load, we need to have this in mind. So this is an important slide because it talks a little bit about what the future looks like. And then the next slide shows sort of how we do the budget every year is this format where we have municipal operations, offsets, subsidies, that's the total operations. Then we put the capital in there and have that a total. And the bottom is actually the total spending, which goes in the ALG plan and then what we have considering our total spending. And we're just at the beginning of this process. So we're just showing here that the department's requested amount is just over 43 million. And all these other things are amounts that we're going to sort out this month or over the next month with input from you all and from the public and the Finance Committee. So it's, this is not, I don't think this is information that is shocking. This is pretty normal for this point in the budget process, but we don't always share this level of detail at this level in the process, so it may make you feel uncomfortable. But I don't feel uncomfortable about it. And then next steps. I think I went through this already at the beginning of the presentation, but the next steps are we're going to present the capital plan and keep working through the budgets until we present after the beginning of the new year. That is the presentation, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we'll open up to questions from my colleagues. Alyssa.
Thank you, John, for this. I'm not feeling uncomfortable, so that's good. I like this additional detail. I have a question about the non-excluded debt. Why does it jump for FY '27 and FY '28 and then go back down to the level that it is for FY '26 and FY '29? What is that?
So it's hard to see at this scale, but the amounts change. For a long time, we borrowed projects with principal level. You can either do level payments or level principal. Mm-hmm. And if you do level principal, you pay it off in kind of a curve fashion. If you do level payments, it's just straight all the way across. So there's some projects that we borrowed that are falling off, and also we have projects that you borrow for, you'll borrow for some things and you only get 5 years of debt service. Some things you borrow for 15 years. So even though we borrow them at the same time, they fall off earlier. So when the green bar gets smaller, it's because projects are paid off. And that opens up capacity for more.
So I guess my question is, what are the projects that are coming? It looks like there are projects coming on in FY '27 because the green bar is taller.
Well,
So I understand the projects falling off, it would make the debt go down, but do you know, like,
Yeah, so the
what
ones,
specifically we've
all the
done?
ones that we just borrowed for this spring are the ones that are now part of our debt service in FY '27. So that'd be the projects approved at FY '24. So that was the fuel depot,
Okay.
sidewalks, complete streets, stormwater, and maybe something else. So all those things, we paid short-term with the money we got from town meeting. We did the borrowing, we got the returns. We had a better rate than 4.25. I don't remember what it was better than 4.25. And now we start paying for it. And then the yellow, those are all the things that were approved at last town meeting. And so we're not going to owe any money on those until
we borrow.
2028.
Okay. Thank you. I guess yeah, I have another question. The public safety facility HVAC was called a conceptual design. Is that because it is electrifying the building? Is that why we need a design rather than just, I'm not an engineer, but I would think if you needed to replace the HVAC, you just take it out and put a new one in, unless there's a significant change that requires engineering design.
Yeah, that's precisely the difference.
Okay.
So we have replaced a few components with, the way that they are now, but to replace the entire system would trigger the need to electrify it based on local bylaw and local policy direction, at least to date. So we're planning to do it that way. There is opportunities to use the Energy Efficiency Fund to help offset these costs. So this would be another example of something that, if it were to move forward, either some or all of it could be funded from a different source of free cash.
Okay. And I don't have any other questions. Probably I will after I hear from you other folks. But I do want to say that I'm very pleased to see the IT capital in here. Fully support that. Definitely a critical need. So I'm behind those items 100%.
Thank you. Other comments? Fran?
I was just going to say thank you for this, and I feel like it's in keeping with, finding the important things that need to be done. And I was happy to see the IT person and the social worker for the Health and Human Services. I think that those are great additions. That's all I had to say.
Thank you. David?
Thank you. I have a bunch of little things. Certainly not for tonight, but I would like to see on all the vehicle replacements, the details about what we're replacing. So the details on the old ambulance, how old it is, what's the condition, details on engine 21, et cetera. Last year, we did this even for the police cruisers. So I would just like to understand that detail. The public safety facilities design, I'm surprised to see that under borrowing. I think I might be more in favor of that being not borrowed, but maybe that's just me. Do we have a number for certified free cash?
We do not, but we've been doing a lot of work to get that worked on. This is a great chance for me to thank Ellie and Tom for their work in preparing this presentation. You'll hear a lot from Tom on the 17th when we do capital. And so Ellie, why don't you take this question, please?
So I will say free cash has been submitted to the DOR, but they're busy right now certifying tax rates. We haven't even heard back from our DOR rep. There's typically a little bit of back and forth. So we don't really have a number just yet that we're confident with releasing, but we do hope to have certification within the next few weeks for sure.
Do you think it'll be done by the 17th? It sounds like that's very iffy.
I surely hope so, but I don't want to make any promises when we're working with the DOR. They're busy people.
Thank you. Another area we'd like to see detail on is just for because the public will want to know this as well as us, for the bridge and culvert program and the sidewalk program, what projects might we tackle with the money we borrow this year. For the bell tower in this building, do we have an assessment of how urgent that is? In other words, do we need to ask town meeting next year for the construction funds even ahead of the design? Or ask the CPC for that money? Because if it's urgent, maybe we don't want to wait 2 years to do that construction?
Thank you. That's a great question, David. So we are waiting for a structural review report from Structures North. At this time, they've indicated preliminarily on site that by shutting off the bell, we should be fine until we're able to address the issues. What we've asked them in the report is to identify short-term and long-term stabilization efforts that we should be undertaking. So we should have that report in hand by the end of this month.
Okay, that'd be great, because I'd be curious. I mean, we certainly don't want to be in a position that if we get something like a microburst, that the top of the building comes off, right? So, it just seems a long time to me with a structural problem to wait 2 years to replace it. I think town meeting would be understanding if we ask for the money and say that we're not going to spend it, and, until we have a design in place and that kind of thing. I think that's something to consider there, even to ask for design and construction funds at once. And I think that's all. These fireworks would be for 2027, is that right?
It would be for July of 26. Yeah, for July of 26. So it's a little confusing because it's funded in FY 27, but we'll be expending it in June 30th, 26 for the fireworks that year.
So these
I'm sorry, 27, you're correct.
Oh, good.
I apologize.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, can I make one other comment?
Sure.
For the personnel things, Mr. Manager, I would like some indication from you as to what your prioritization of the new hires would be. Right, there's 16 people listed, right? Counting part-time as half and just my little count. And so I think to sort through that in the final budget request, I would want information from you to say, these are the most critical, these are second-tier critical, et cetera.
Thank you. I'll start that process on the 17th in terms of early recommendations, but then when the budget recommendation comes out in January will be what I really think we need to do. And the work that we're going to do is to figure out other ways to fund it in the meantime.
Jim?
So if we chose none of these staffing positions for next year, the proposed budget wouldn't go down, right? Because these are all in addition to the current operating budget requests?
That's correct.
Okay. The other question was, and maybe this is for my ALG reps, it seems like, as you get further in this process, you're really going to need to know, what the revenue split is with the schools. And David's been particularly eloquent at pushing for the ALG to at least agree on a revenue split so that the entities have, targets to work from. And I was just wondering how that process was going.
Well, I think one of the important things, we've got a little more time. The next ALG meeting actually isn't until November 19th. So we've got a couple of weeks, and we will have the next presentation from the town manager on the 17th. So we'll have more information that Alyssa and I will be able to bring to ALG. The schools are kind of working on sort of the same pathway as well. So I would say at the select board meeting on Monday, December 1st, we'll probably have some better feedback from ALG, and we'll kind of know, we'll let us get that point where you folks sit. Yes.
To finish that off. Okay, so I see that making progress on developing this budget then allows you guys to turn around and explain what levels of pain happen at different revenue splits. Because you'll be able to say, oh yeah, we won't be able to hire, this, we won't be able to do this capital project. So that's, okay, I get it now, thanks.
Okay, a couple of points that I've got in no particular order. This has come up in the past. I hope at some point during the budget process, you'll be able to bring forward a comprehensive plan on how we're going to deal with our aging streetlight infrastructure. I brought this up, this is probably at least the third year. And, we've got streetlights, many of which have been non-functioning for 2 years. And we talk a lot about, traffic safety, pedestrian safety, and here's, kind of the oldest kind of safety issues for pedestrians, is having streetlights, especially at intersections. And a lot of them don't work. And a lot of the ones that do work have arced down so far. Some of those LEDs are approaching 20 years old. And I know it's a nasty problem. I've dealt with it in the past, but I think it's something that we really have to do. Amongst other things, for those of my colleagues who don't realize this, whether the light is working or not, it costs us money. We have to pay a tariff on each one of those lights, whether it's producing anything or not. So I think even just from a point of view of guarding the taxpayer's pocketbook, we need to make sure that all the lights we're paying for actually work. So I really strongly encourage you to include that in your presentations in the future. Second point on fireworks. So my understanding is, I got a little confused with the back and forth. My understanding is that the cost of the fireworks, which will be fired off this coming July 4th, 26, have been paid for in the previous year. And
The allocation at town meeting that just happened in May didn't pay for the fireworks that we saw in July. It paid for the fireworks that we'll see in July of 26.
They have been paid?
We have the money.
You have the
We
money.
have
Okay.
$40,000, which we'll use to pay for
Okay.
those fireworks. And then
That's-
this request would be to pay for the following years.
The following year, all right. Just wanted to confirm that. We can certainly have a longer discussion about this, but this is just my own personal feeling. July 4th, 26 is the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. That's really important for me, and I think everybody supports that. Going forward, I personally would not be in favor of continuing the fireworks and the 4th of July celebrations. I think now, after this year, it'd be a good time to stop it. I'm concerned not only because of the initial cost of blowing a lot of stuff up, but more importantly, all of the other costs, which I know are substantial, and they're held in departmental budgets, police, fire, DPW. Every department is paying for this. It's all hidden in there. It's a huge operation. I frankly question, looking at the percentage of folks that attend there, how many actually are Acton taxpayers, and how, we've become a regional draw for this area, and I'm not sure that when we're talking about checking in the couch cushions for money, whether we can afford to continue to be a regional draw this whole thing got started, we had some very generous merchants that were financing a great deal of it. That hasn't happened since COVID. And I frankly would feel bad about sending our economic development director out to try to encourage people to donate more money. I think it might be time. It might have run its course. Just my personal feeling, and I'm sure we'll have more discussions on this. Finally, when we're talking about interactions with the Finance Committee, I think it is important that we do have a meeting, roundtable discussion with FinCom about the DPW project. So I think looking at the timing of meetings and such, we should probably try to figure out where that go in there. It'd be great to get their feedback and to have a lot of details agreed upon before we get into January and February as far as, who's going to support a new building, especially we're asking for $900,000 for redesign. That's it for me. If any of my colleagues have any comments, final comments? Alyssa.
I just want to clarify with the fireworks budget. My understanding was that the 40,000 included monies for staff, so that it's not necessarily hidden in the department's budget like recreation, police, and fire. I thought only part of the 40,000 was for the fireworks, and additional was for renting equipment and paying staff, and that it was all supplemented by donations, because it actually costs like 75,000.
That's a fair question. So the 40,000 goes for a number of things. That includes the fireworks, the porta potties, the band, the cost, because we're not charging fees to offset that expense. There's also a lot of different things that we put into it, time for staff. We'll start planning here in the next couple of weeks, in early December. So there's a lot of meetings that professional staff, police department, fire department, we attend, and that ends up being a lot of time that doesn't get accounted for in this budget. Recreation staff that attends and works along with the park stewards, volunteers. We have camp counselors who work that night as well. That's paid out of the recreation revolving account. So there is a lot of funding that's not included in that 40,000 that's expended, at least from recreation and then from other departments as well.
David.
A couple of shorter comments. I mean, I understand that we might want to consider dropping the fireworks after next year. I'd be interested in knowing if there was any savings, would there be any savings, and if so, how much for switching to something like a laser show? Is that about the same cost? Is that half the cost? Is that?
Unfortunately, I believe it's more than what we're budgeted. I've heard numbers in the past of being anywhere between 60 to 80,000 for a show that's similar to ours, which is 20 minutes. I don't have any quotes to back that up, but I've been told in the field that it costs more than what we're paying for our fireworks.
Interesting. So blowing stuff up is cheaper. Another comment, completely separate area that I forgot to mention before. I think you said, John, during your presentation that the fire station hiring proposal was modeled on having 4 stations. I would like to know what it would be for 3 stations, or how that would work, because I think, we've taken these steps to kind of move away from 4 stations. And so, and, in every year for the past several, I've said that it's hard to do one without the other. I mean, I don't want to hire people until we've kind of committed to what our station plan is, or at least, are pretty sure about it. So that's something maybe you can bring next time. I don't need an answer tonight, but I'll ask the question again when we move forward with hiring. And then to follow up on Jim's comment about the revenue split, I think there's a back and forth that has to happen here. I think it's important that the ALG take a step, but I think it'll take a couple months to settle. And I think if we don't get to a percentage this month, it basically is irrelevant then, which is what has happened for the past 2 years, right? Because if the percentage comes in February or March or later, it doesn't matter. We've already figured it out. And I think it makes it more difficult. I completely agree with you that both the school district and the town are better served having a target and then being able to react to that target. So I hope we do that.
Thank you. Other comments? Alyssa?
I have a question about the $700,000 for the stormwater borrowing. RAC is nearing completion on their report back to the board. And one of the things that they've discussed over the past several months is the fact that borrowing is not a great long-term solution. And obviously, we're not at long-term solution right now with this being only the third year, because you have to pay interest when you borrow money. So I guess I would want to know if we can get the information from the DPW about whether or not there could be a pause in that $750,000 borrowing for a year or two before we have in place a sustainable funding solution, whether that is a stormwater utility fee or something else, increasing the DPW budget, coming out of the general fund, a combination of grants, et cetera. So, I mean, I've read the asset report from Woodard and Kerr, and I understand that there are several critical needs. I'm just wondering if they need to happen, or if there can be a year or two pause, because it does take a couple of years to establish a utility if that's the path that we take. And I also just want to mention that I listened in on the school committee's budget sub meeting, and obviously that's a tiny part of the school committee, just a few members, not the entire committee. They have to then bring their budget guidelines to the full school committee to vote. But they, in their recommended budget guidance, landed on a budget increase between 3.75% and 4.25%. So that's not been approved yet, but I think that that's important information for us to have, given David's comment about, how time is of the essence here. And the next ALG meeting is not until after our next select board meeting. So we might want to actually have a discussion about the municipal percent increase and the splits, and get some input from the other board members.
To the question of deferring the stormwater, certainly, it's something that we'll have to discuss after we present the capital needs on the 17th. It'll have all the detail of not just these projects, but all the projects for the next 9 years after this. And in that, you'll notice a few projects that we've deferred in the past. And once we present that 10-year plan, we'll take the next 2 weeks or so to figure out which projects we can defer. Realistically, I mean, those are decisions that we're going to have to make. We can't do all these things. We already know that. So that could be a good candidate to push, certainly. And then that's part of the prioritization work that we hope to do with you all. And I think, yeah, I think this, and I just forgot to mention that we did do a streetlight study this summer, partially. And so that work is ongoing, and I can provide a better update to the board on that next time.
Thank you for that answer to the stormwater question. I definitely don't, it might seem like something that, we could easily defer, but I don't want to do that too soon if we need this amount of funds to tackle these particular culverts and bridges, because they are so deteriorated because the repair cost for an emergency failure is significantly higher, and it involves, potentially property damage, potentially economic impacts if we have to close a road on a roadway that has a lot of businesses and people have to detour, et cetera.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 7, discuss tri-board meeting takeaways. I think just to kick off, it's not the first time that I'm aware of where we've had this sort of a back and forth, and I was pleased to hear it, and it's interesting to hear about the substantial challenges that are faced by our neighbors in Boxborough right now. That it sounds pretty much like they're going to have an operating override regardless of what happens with the school budget. So that's something to keep in mind. I guess one of the questions that I would ask my colleagues is, did you see the value in this meeting? Do you think we should have some sort of a follow-up meeting going into maybe the January timeframe, or was this a one-off? Maybe we'll do it again next year. So whatever input folks have got, I'd be happy to hear it. Jim.
My instinct is that the next useful step would involve more back and forth, and thus should probably be a smaller group. So, I was thinking, maybe 1 or 2 people from each entity getting together might be a good next step.
Thank you. Fran?
I thought it was very helpful. It was sort of like misery loves company, but I thought it was useful. And I could see that as an annual kind of meeting, strategically, maybe before budgets. Yeah.
Thank you. David?
I agree with Fran that as an annual meeting makes sense. And the reason I say that is I think the detailed work moving forward really doesn't involve both towns except through the school district, right? It would be very difficult for that body to do any detailed work. And I think from this point on, the work is detailed. I do think it's valuable for us to know, each other's challenges, and I think that is extremely helpful. And so I thought it was a very good meeting. And if we run into some obstacle in the, figuring out the A and B budgets for the schools based on Boxborough's override, then there could be some value in some follow-up, but I'm thinking that would be through the school committee anyway. So anyway, I think the annual meeting is good, not convinced on more frequent.
Thank you. Alyssa?
I think that I also agree that it was helpful to get together with folks from Boxborough and hear about their challenges. It's also my understanding from listening on the budget subcommittee meeting today that they will be preparing an A and B budget for Boxborough's override passage or not. I think that one of the things that I find challenging is the follow-up communication that the board has received, and as well as the finance committee. And there seem to be different perspectives on percentage increases over the years of the Acton assessment and the municipal operating plus debt. And it's concerning to me that we don't share the same numbers. Like, how are we getting different numbers if we are, passing budgets at town meeting and we have, spreadsheets that have the actual expenditures and the actual figures that have been passed. So I think going forward, if there are more, workshop dialogue that meetings with just a couple members. I mean, that happens in ALG, so I don't know that it's going to happen any differently outside of that, because we're not going to be meeting with Boxborough. But that's just something for us to keep in mind, that we have different views on how much pain each entity has experienced over the last few years and how many cuts have been made. We might not see that for the municipal as a cut, but we look at the budget and the requests from staff that they see are necessary to meet needs from the public, that they see every single day in their interactions with the public. So we might not be cutting staff positions as they have in the school district, but we are still making cuts because we're not pursuing certain programs, projects, or new positions to meet those needs. We're doing that in other ways, like the ones that John mentioned tonight, reorganization and changing roles and changing the way we do things and pursuing grants.
Thank you. David.
So two things. Just for I've shared this with some members of the Finance Committee and some others, but just for myself, I produced a 10-year retrospective on spending. It kind of looks like the ALG sheet, except it's all in the past, and it's all based on numbers from town meeting results. And so they're not projections or anything, it's all history. I'd be happy to put that in the packet next time if you want to have it during the discussion of ALG for next time. The second thing I wanted to mention is at the school committee meeting after the tri-board meeting, and they alluded to this in the tri-board meeting, they had their kind of budget outlook, which has an over 6% budget increase for the next couple of years. Almost all of that is for personnel. Their percentage of personnel is actually bigger than the towns. Plus, our non-personnel costs, we have more latitude as to when we take them on. Just like we were beginning to discuss tonight, what capital projects can we take on this year? And if we don't, we'll postpone them till next year, right? And we do that based on a lot of factors. Some of the factor is how robust is free cash, how not robust is free cash. And free cash doesn't drive the tax rate. Of course, it's tax money, but it doesn't drive the tax rate. So anyway, they have a very big thing, and their non-personnel costs there's a lot of line items for the various schools and things, but they're pretty modest. You could zero them all out, and you wouldn't solve the problem. I'm not saying that there's nothing there that could be tweaked and optimized. There certainly is, but it's not going to be huge numbers. The second thing I want to say about that is that the AB Forward reorganization process, some people are discouraged about that. I've talked to some people in town that, that says it's not going to fix everything, and I absolutely agree that it's not going to fix everything, but it should not be underestimated. It is huge. If a sustainability, an option with high sustainability is selected, the budget problem goes from over 6% to over 5%, right? And it goes from having the needs for dire cuts to having the needs for serious cuts, right? And so that is not, we should not underestimate the importance of that decision on the part of the school district. It will have huge effects on them and on the town's budget.
Thank you. And yes, David, that retrospective that you suggested, that would be very useful. So if you can get it to the manager and get it in the packet, that would be great. Thank you. All right, we'll move ahead to the consent agenda. Item 8, approved meeting minutes, October 20th, 22nd, and 27, 2025. Item 9, approve minor modifications to condition 3.1.4 of the use special permit number 4/22/2024-501. Let's roll, 930 Main Street.
Hold.
Number 10, approve appointment of Kay Aoki as a full member of the Council on Aging Board with a term to end on June 30th, 2028. Number 11, approve appointment of Nikhil Manny as an associate member of the Land Stewardship Committee with a term to end on June 30th, 2026.
Move to approve consent items 8, 10, and 11.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve consent items 8, 10, and 11. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, approved. Number 9, to the hold.
I held this one because I have a memory that we have a proposed motion that we need to actually verbalize the change, because it's not written down in the consent. But now I can't find it, of course.
Jim.
The proposed, there was a late breaking
Yeah.
9.1, and at the bottom of it, there's the movement that we find the requested modification be minor in nature and move to amend the decision to allow for hours of operation from Sunday to Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. So it is laid out in that. That's what you're asking, right, what the actual motion is?
Yes.
And I agree, it's good to make that explicit. It's a good reason to hold it.
David.
Yes, I was wondering, I don't recall in our discussions that we were thinking of opening it up to essentially have no restrictions on hours, which is what this does. I understand that's what's in here now, but that was not my understanding. I was moving my computer here so I can read and talk to you guys at the same time. We temporarily did Monday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday hours to get them through. And then they had a list of their ideal hours, which were Monday, Tuesday through Thursday, and Saturday. And somehow the item in the packet says basically they can be open whenever they want. I'm not sure I agree with they can be open whenever they want. And I would like one of the other, I would rather continue what we did now, the Monday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or the Monday, Tuesday, Saturday that they said is important to them. And unfortunately, there's nobody here to discuss this. And I know that the Economic Development Director did talk to the neighbors and didn't get huge objections, but still, I'm not sure that I am agreed to open it up all the time.
The owner's online.
Yeah, so just to clarify, the hours would be 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day, but not anytime. So within that time frame. And I think the business representative is here, Jeffrey Reynolds.
Yes,
If-
let's
if
hear
the-
from the applicant.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, it's actually Kelly. I apologize. So our hopes with doing the Saturday through Sunday, was strictly to avoid having to come back, on a regular basis, to discuss any other changes, because as a new business, we're not exactly sure what's going to work best. It might be that the days that we think are good and ideal aren't going to be good for our customers. So we're kind of in a fluctuation right now, and we don't want to have to keep coming back over and over again, particularly where there's no other objections. And we did our best to try to mitigate the complaints, and I'm really not sure what else we can do, but I think that restricting our hours, I mean, kind of just because of the type of business we are, seems, well, it's concerning, but we're not trying to be open all of the hours listed. We're just trying to reduce the amount of time needed to change our hours to, prosper. And we have been taking into consideration our neighbors.
Okay, thank you. So let me give you my perspective on this. I frankly don't see any problem with approving the hours that they've requested. I don't see any reason why we should put some additional restriction on what's already an incredibly restrictive permit, restrictive process we've gone through. The number of locations even that a firearms business can exist in Acton is incredibly small. They're heavily restricted and heavily supervised by local police, by the state, and by the federal government. Our economic development director reached out to all of the businesses, and there were no complaints from anyone. So I don't understand it, other than, people might have a problem with a particular kind of business. I might have a particular problem with a nail salon, and yet I don't think it's within our purview to create artificial restrictions on nail salons. By the same token, if the firearms business is conducting their business in accordance with the permits, legally, I just don't understand it. And thinking of the kind of clientele they'll likely have, I would expect that they'd probably have a lot of people coming in, hobbyists on Saturdays and Sundays that might want to conduct business. So I frankly don't understand what the problem is with allowing the kind of hours that they're requesting. I don't think that other than with a common victualler license or something like that, I don't think we've put that kind of restriction on any other business in town. Alyssa.
Thanks. I am comfortable with the proposed motions that were put in the packet, I believe, this afternoon. They're definitely not, the hours that are proposed are definitely not any time, as the manager said, just 10 to 8, 7 days a week. And I agree that I don't think it's reasonable to expect the business owner to come to the board each time they want to shift their hours to meet the customer's needs. So, maybe Monday or Friday turns out to be a better day than Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Although, the intent of the bylaw regulating where gun shops can be is, and I'm trying to find it so I can read it, but I can't find it because this bylaw is 214 pages long. But basically, it's to limit this type of business from areas where residents live and children are. And the law is defined as educational, meaning just schools that are like public schools or private schools, academic in nature. So I think it's definitely, Dean, you're saying that you don't understand the point of this, but the point is that there are businesses there that are educational in nature and have children as clients. That said, I think that the staff and the board has done everything that we can to negotiate. When I suggested that the different tenants get together, I was anticipating that the property owner would do that, would facilitate them conversing with, all of the tenants at that address, not that town staff would do that. But it's great that our economic development director did reach out and, spend a lot of time negotiating this. And it seems that there isn't an issue as we were led to believe. So I think that, I would like to make this motion to have the hours be, thank you, David, it's here somewhere. To be, I don't have it because I have the bylaw open. So can I make that motion?
Please do.
Okay. Do I need to make both motions? I move that we find the requested modification to be minor in nature and allow it to proceed as a minor modification. I move to amend decision 04/22/2024-501, condition 3.1.4 to allow for hours of operation from Sunday to Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Okay, that's the motion. Do I have a second? Well, I will second it. David?
Yeah, I don't have a strong objection to this, and I completely understand the business owner's desire to have flexibility to make her business succeed. I was asking the questions here because I've heard from residents who had concerns about the time, and knowing, and I have frankly mixed feelings about whether the check-in with the board is valuable. And, if they propose to change their times to something that would be, that some others, people in town might think is a problem, right? And I think that they should have there should be a way of just, discussing that or bringing up anything someone objects to us so that we can figure out whether it's important enough to deal with or not. And so I was just bringing it up for that reason. Again, I don't have a really strong objection. I would be, kind of interested. I mean, maybe it doesn't even have a purpose if the town was notified when the hours were changed, but maybe that doesn't have a purpose. So I'm fine with the motion as it is.
Jim?
I was looking at a couple of the numbers. The hours that were listed in this memo as that the owners considered ideal was 5 days a week for a total of 30 hours. What we approved in the short run was 4 days a week, 32 hours. And the current proposal that we're looking at that's been seconded is 7 days a week, 70 hours. So it suggested to me that there might be a way of amending condition 3.14 to say, to allow for hours of operation from Sunday to Saturday, 10 to 8 p.m., with a limit of, 30, 35, some number of hours per week, and leaving at least one day a week where they're not open. But that would all be under their discretion, of what day that would be and what 30 hours, or up to 30 hours. Seems like that would deal with, the concern that this is a sudden leap from, 4 hours a week to 70 hours a week. But give them some discretion to figure out, where they want to put their hours. And if that had any level of support, I'd be happy to try to turn that into language.
Fran?
I was under the impression that this was not initially a foot traffic store, that it was more behind the scenes and internet kind of thing. So that's a lot of hours, in my opinion. That's like a retail boutique.
So to that, I will ask, those of you who ever go up to Highland Commons and go by Cabela's, which has a fairly large gun and ammunition section, how many hours do they operate? And it's probably in excess of 70 hours per week. And I mean, that's, it's a business decision that folks make. The fact that a business started out as being a very modest operation with a lot of, internet and has been successful enough to grow, I think that's something that we should encourage when somebody is selling a legal and highly regulated product. So I don't have any particular problems with them being open 70 hours a week. And in point of fact, they might decide that it just doesn't make sense. I mean, lots of businesses shut down for Mondays or whatever. But I don't think it's appropriate for the select board to be that involved in the day-to-day operations of a legal business. Melissa?
I am eager to vote, so we can go home, but I just want to say that I don't think that it's reasonable and it's not in alignment with the intent of the bylaw for us to specify a certain number of hours. And it's clear to me that they're not going to be operating 70 hours. And Cabela's is not a good example because they also sell really good socks there too. And pants and shoes, and fishing poles. So they're not going to be open 70 hours. I don't think it's reasonable for them to need to come back to the board every time there's a change in hours. And to David's point about an issue, the reason that we came initially was because an issue was brought to our attention that turns out to be not so much of an issue. So that could happen again in the future, and we could always open it back up again if it's reasonable and in alignment with the intent of the bylaw.
Okay, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay, I believe we passed. Thank you very much. I'll take one more motion.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and second to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We're adjourned. Thank you. See you in 2 weeks, if not sooner.